Welcome to this tutorial on exporting your first video out of Final Cut Pro for the TeamDrive. So what we're going to do is just make sure that you're selecting your timeline. Sometimes if you have a clip selected, it'll export the clip. So click out of that section and just make sure the timeline is highlighted. We can check that in the next step later. But we're going to say File, Share, Master File. And note, it has the command symbol and E. So E for export. So I like to use key commands, Command E to export this file. So you've done all the editing work, you have audio files, it's all mixed properly, it's mastered, and it's approved, so you've shown me. So at that point, we're ready to export. And I just wanted to show a couple things here. This is a 5 gigabyte file. That's pretty large, and it's because we're in ProRes 422 on the timeline. So we're going to change that. If you go to settings here, Apple ProRes 422 is an uncompressed video format, so every single frame is uncompressed, and it's kind of a large file type. So we're going to change the codec to H.264, which is an MPEG format, MPEG 4 compression, and that format makes it a much smaller file. So we've gone to 5 gigs to 500 megs, which is half of a gig. So we're like, definitely making a much smaller file. So you have to do this because if not, it's going to take forever to go up the drive and to watch it on drive. And anyway, when you put it on drive, there's an additional step where it then processes the file. So it'll take a ProRes file and make it an MPEG 4 file anyway. So why save yourself some time by making it a smaller file. So at this point we're kind of good, but I usually just check off don't include the chapter markers and don't open with QuickTime. So what happens is, like, when you export, if you leave this checked, QuickTime will pop up like a preview of the video. You don't need to do that, so do nothing. So once this is set, it'll be remembered in your preferences, and basically every other time you go to spit out a file, it'll be that. Especially if you quit at the end of the period, it'll kind of memorize the preferences after you quit out of Final Cut. So you should be good to go on that. We don't do anything within roles. You don't have to do anything in info, but what you can check is to make sure it's the whole timeline. So I can do it. I can watch this back, or I can like hover scrub to make sure that this is the entire timeline. Because like I said at the beginning, if you have one of these files selected, you may be just exporting one single file and not the entire timeline, like down here. So that's pretty much it. You have the settings all set up. It's a smaller file. We say next. And here we're not going to be going to downloads. We want to make sure that we're always putting all of our files on the C drive. We keep the system drive clean. So I'm going to go, it's Brandon's machine, and there he has it there. And then it looks like he's got this interview project folder, so I'll put it there. And if you wanted to, you can maybe make a folder called exports in your folder on the C drive. It kind of depends on how you want to set it up. But I like how it's got the date, it's got the interview. That should work for me. So the last thing you want to check is the name. So I would name it today's date, 10, and what's today, the 5th. Interview, and this is the final one. Maybe interview, final, export, or whatever makes sense for you. So interview final or export works for me, and I'm going to save that. Now, there is a processing that has to take place. So we're going to look within the sharing window here. So this background tasks, you always want to take a look at it and make sure that you're not doing other stuff that stops it. Because once I start working again in Final Cut, it might stop the sharing process. But once I stop working, the background task will resume. Final Cut Pro is kind of smart like that, but sometimes it disables the stuff that you're trying to accomplish. So stop working, let it do its sharing thing. If you look down at your C drive, like I'm looking at underneath the machine, the light's blinking. That's telling me that there's some processing and there's a file being written to the drive. So once this thing is in its entirely done state, there'll be a window that pops up over here that tells you that the file is done exporting. And I'm also going to show you on the C drive where it's going. So if I go over to your C drive, and then we go into this interview folder, here we're seeing it, but it's not done yet. So a lot of times a student will see that this is here, but they'll go to maybe try to upload it to either TeamDrive or YouTube or something, and it hasn't finished exporting, so you'll get an error, and it'll just well, actually I don't even think you'll get an error. If it goes up to TeamDrive, it might just continually be processing and never stop processing. So basically it's like a bad file until you have it completely finished. So wait until this thing is done. You'll get a pop-up window that confirms it's done, and then you're going to upload this to TeamDrive. So we're at 67% and waiting. So the reason why it's taking so long is it's compressing this format. So we're going from one file format, which was the the Apple ProRes 422 file, and we're changing it or transcoding it. So a transcoding is moving from one file format to another file format. So we're moving to this H.264, which is a more compressed format, and there's our window here. So we can close that, or you can click show, but here it is. That's the final file. And then I always spacebar preview it, just double check before I'm, committing to it.
If I could,
So I would scrub through and make sure, yes, this is the one that I put all my graphics on, and everything looks good and sounds good. If you want, you can watch it. But then you're gonna upload it to TeamDrive. So we'll jump over to TeamDrive, and there should be a folder within your class period. We're in period 6, and we'll make a new folder here. I don't know if you can. I guess yes, we can. So we'll call this cell phone interviews, and create the folder. There's the folder. We're going to put it here. So we'll new. Oh, nope. New. There we go. File upload, and we're going over to our C drive and our folder where we did the exporting stuff. So there it is. Boom. Open it, and we'll be up on the TeamDrive in no time. So that's going to do it for this tutorial video.